Mm-hmm. Here we are. Here we are. I never do remember. How do we know when other people are joining us?
I think we see a little ticker up in the corner.
Okay, great. All right, well, we're glad you're here. We're hoping you're here. It's been one of those weeks without technology, without water, without heat sometimes. I'm not even sure what we were hoping for.
Oh my God. I don't
Just hoping to get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just feeling really glad that we knew this is Texas, and if you wait long enough, the weather will change. And if you can't hop on a plane and go to Mexico, it doesn't really matter because it's going to be 70 degrees the following week.
It's 50 out right now, 55.
Yeah, when I went to the grocery store.
There's still snow on the ground.
Oh, good. Here come our friends. Yeah, we are. We're back with electricity and water, and we're just bemoaning the fact that we didn't get to go to Mexico this week, but I won't bring that up anymore. So we're going to keep this upbeat, and we got through it. We actually had some fun. We were like, oh, well, yeah. Why are you laughing? It was nice the day that we got above freezing, and you and Josh brought the girls over.
When we were able to come here. So
that was good.
Monday morning around 2 a.m., our power went out. Is that when yours went out too?
It's all a blur.
Yeah.
The lights weren't on, so the clocks were off. I don't know what time it was.
What a week.
Anyhow, what a week. But that's not why we're here. We are here to assure you that nothing keeps these girls down. And we're back today, and today we're talking about community as the third cornerstone of creativity. And in case you haven't joined us before and you're wanting to get caught up, the cornerstones of creativity are what we think of as the building blocks for an intentionally creative life. Mm-hmm. And the first one was curiosity, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. And then we talked about clarity last week. Mm-hmm. And this week we're talking about community, because you might think that creative intelligence is the sort of thing that you do on your own. And to some extent you do. But I also think it's really important to seek a community. And frankly, the problem is where to look. And so we're going to get into that in just a couple of minutes. So you have anything you'd like to say to kick it off? Because otherwise I'd like to read a poem from Naomi Nye.
No, let's do it.
Okay. I think this sums up community so beautifully. This is by the American poet Naomi Shihab Nye, who actually lives in San Antonio. And I feel very fortunate to say that I know her, think very highly of her. The Arabs used to say, when a stranger appears at your door, feed him for 3 days before asking who he is, where he's come from, or where he's headed. That way he'll have strength enough to answer. Or by then you'll be such good friends you don't care. Let's go back to that. Rice? Pine nuts? Here, take the red brocade pillow. My child will serve water to your horse. No, I was not busy when you came. I was not preparing to be busy. That's the armor everyone puts on to pretend they have a purpose in the world. I refuse to be claimed. Your plate is waiting, and let's snip fresh mint into your tea. Pretty sweet, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So I think that there are all different kinds of communities. What's your most recent experience of community?
Actually, oh man, the storm this week brought out community all over Texas, I'm sure. And in my neighborhood specifically, we've only been there about a year, and we belong to a Facebook group of the homeowners in the area. And all week, people were checking on each other, offering to bring food, firewood. Most of the houses in our neighborhood got power back before we did. There was some issue with our transformer box and 5 other houses in our block, of maybe 200 houses or so. And so we got on. We're checking with other people and quickly realized we were kind of behind the curve, and people were just so generous with with their resources. It was really incredible, actually. And I've heard stories about that all over, from friends in San Antonio, in Austin, and that was just heartwarming.
Well, and I think, this is an expansion in a way of what community is, but we all know that we're in a phase when it comes to business, where businesses that really invest in the community or are examples of relating and keeping track of their community, what a sense of devotion we have. I used to think it was all about the Spurs basketball team because that was a community and it was great. But this week, we have a grocery store chain in Texas called HEB, which is the initials for the founders. And it actually originated just outside of San Antonio. You're a San Antonio girl, so you know this. But this week, it made national news, I think. One of the stores in Leander, Texas, which is just, I think it's right outside of Austin.
Just north,
lost power, and they just let people take everything. And people were just pushing their carts out and helping each other and loading up cars and taking care of the elderly. And I thought, no wonder they have garnered such an important, they've got a fantastic reputation because they do this in one way or another. They're so responsive. And so I think that it's really inspiring to see that community can be at a corporate level in that way. What we're talking about is personal community. But I think that, I was in an HEB today that was closed yesterday because the shelves were completely empty. And this morning, by God, they were up and running. And when I got in there, the lines were clear, 15 carts long again. But no one was crabby and people were helping each other and they were social distancing and everybody had on masks. And I thought, these clerks, and I know they'll do right by their employees, but it was a very gratifying thing to see a company like that in action and to hope that that can rub off on some larger scale. We're not talking politics today.
But cry this early in the live stream.
I'm not crying. Oh, are you?
It's been a long week.
It's been a long week. Okay, well, so let's cycle back. Everybody breathe. It's good to be here. It's a bright sunny day. We actually had to wall off the windows so we wouldn't be washed out in here, which is good news. It's going to be great for the spring, lots of water. But let's dig back down into where we find community from a creative standpoint.
I'm just seeing Lynn is in Austin, and actually, Lynn, if you need water, we actually have good running water now in Buda, and we might be able to bring you some. So let's connect after this if you need
Lynn,
some.
for sure. And
Darlene's offering too.
Okay.
We were very lucky to keep our water the entire time the power was out.
Yeah.
And it's good water. We don't have to boil it like most of Austin does.
Yeah,
so.
They probably looked at the map and they said, if they have little kids, give them good water. And all you old people are sitting around with nothing to do, you can boil your water.
I wish they could do that.
Yeah, well, anyhow, this could be the foundation for all kinds of novels, right?
Yeah.
But like Peggy says, it's been a really long week.
Oh, man.
So, okay, this isn't just about that.
No. But that community is just forefront in my mind right now.
I know.
But what we're here to talk about is creativity and community.
Right. So may I?
Sure.
Okay. So I want to tell you a story, how old are you now?
How old am I? I have no idea.
Okay.
33.
Yeah, you're 33. Good. Well, this is a story that I would probably never have told you before because, there's a certain sort of proprietary distance that adult parents have to have with their kids until their kids get older, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
So in any event, when I had been in Texas a couple of years and was unfortunately divorced, it'd been a big shock being here. nothing was working out, and I had this job managing apartment property, which I was totally wrong for. Totally wrong
Yeah.
for that. Oh my gosh. And everybody seemed to know it but me. But that's usually true with my early stories. I guess I was in the dark, which maybe that's why I still have nice skin. I don't know. Anyhow, everything was so falling apart that I got in my red 1980 Volkswagen bus camper van, and I drove from Texas back to Minneapolis, where my parents lived. And when I got up there, put my two cats in the van. They disappeared into whatever stuff I could fit in the van. That was it. I was never going back. Was never going back. And I drove to Minneapolis. And when I got there, I was pretty much in a shambles personally. And fortunately, there was a place in Minneapolis that I adored, and I don't remember the exact name. If you're watching and you're from Minneapolis, you know this. I think it was called Earth Guild, but I could be wrong. But it was a store that was down in Dinkytown, and it had threads and ethnic textiles and all kinds of cool stuff like that. And they had just opened a branch in a mall, and they were hiring. And I thought that would be such an incredible place to work, because I was probably 31. And so I got an appointment for an interview, and I went to the mall, and I got out of my van and I walked into the mall, and I got inside the vestibule, and I had a total meltdown. I was frozen. I couldn't go another step. And I stood in the vestibule and I was shaking and I started to cry, and I was so embarrassed because I was in public and this was happening and I didn't know how to get a grip on it. And I just went back out. I didn't go to the interview. I went back and I got back in the van and I drove back to my parents' house, and I went into the house and they could see I was visibly shaken. And I went down the hall to the bedroom that I had in their house. And my grandmother came because my grandmother and grandfather Palmer, my mother's folks, were visiting. That was just coincidental. My grandmother knocked on the door and she said, honey, we've got to talk. What's wrong? And I just broke down weeping. Everything had gone wrong and it all came pouring out. And she just grabbed me the way only a grandma can. And she said, honey, sometimes it takes you a long time to hear God's plan for you. But there is a plan. And that was, I didn't even know whether I believed in God at that point, but it was such a comforting moment, because I don't think my mom and dad knew what to do. I think that's the sort of thing that an older generation, like my grandmother, she wasn't afraid to offend me or step on my boundaries or do any of that. And it was the beginning of my way back. And then your dad called and proposed over the phone, and 2 weeks later, I was on my way back to Texas. And I had zero community at that point. I had darling family members who believed in me, but that's all I had at that point. And when I got back to San Antonio, of course, now we fast forward, when I got the job building the surface design department at the Southwest Craft Center, I never forgot how alone I felt. So it became really, really important to me to make every single person who came into that department feel welcomed, because what I recognized after teaching only a couple of classes was that the demographic was a lot like me. A lot of mainly women who had not yet run the risk of being creative and were alone, and maybe were great at other jobs and had been great mothers and had been very successful in lots of ways, but had not had that opportunity to experience the joy of creative failure and success, and especially in an environment where everybody was okay with it. It did not matter. We weren't a guild. We weren't counting stitches. Hell, I'm the worst whenever anybody, half the people who are watching this right now know how I measure things. You do. Anybody who's watched our recipe videos knows that there's a Dunawalt teaspoon and then there's a teaspoon, right? So all kinds of people were just, I suppose, laughing and putting up with the way I did things and going home and doing it the right way. But there were a lot of people, I hope, who thought, well, crap, if it's working for her, I guess it'll work for me too. And when I left that job 10 years later, my community in that department was so strong that they moved with me to my new space. And they nurtured me, and we nurtured each other there. And Susie Mundy and Beth Kennedy and, Zette Bear, we were all in it together, nurturing each other. And it was such a great lesson. And that's really where CST came from.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that's a little bit of a long story, but that, I hope, is a demonstration of what I saw in action and why I think community is such an important cornerstone, because now we're in a completely new reality. And we don't necessarily get to meet in San Antonio in a studio every week. We don't necessarily get to go to Celebration Circle once a week and have that community in San Antonio. There are a lot of things we can't do, but there are things we can do. And what we can do is all of this stuff that's online that we can shape in such a way that the community is there and it's reliable and it's a safe place. And that's what I think each of us needs in order to really cultivate our creative intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, I didn't mean for that to get to you, but I know you've watched, well, we can talk in a more general way, or I was actually on a track of thinking about CST in that community. Do you have any observations of what you've witnessed watching people come together?
I am always surprised by how sharing one thing in common, which is really, artistic endeavors or wanting to feel more creative in your life, whatever that looks like, has brought so many people together. But then and I guess I do feel like I'm kind of a supporting role here. I kind of help make CST happen on a technological side of things. And I haven't fully participated, but I've observed so much vulnerability and support and people connecting over hardships and things that aren't, or hobbies that aren't necessarily artistic. And I really admire that, how people have made friendships and stuck together even outside of CST.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a retreat a few years ago, and so I got to meet quite a few people who came to San Antonio, and even a small specific group where we went to dinner one night, and I love those women. If you're watching now, I had such a wonderful weekend, and even though we kind of have an age gap, and I'm maybe not the same demographic as most of the people in CST, I love everyone so much, and I'm grateful to be a part of it myself.
Well, which shows how those kinds of friendships can transcend, which is good, because a lot of the time we don't necessarily know how to connect, to be my age, to connect to younger women. I'm fortunate because I have a daughter, but there are a lot of, so anyway, without belaboring the point, I think that it just goes to prove that when our language is creativity, we can transcend age.
Yeah.
And I would expect that probably when the language is creativity, we can transcend all kinds of differences.
Yeah.
And that makes it literally a universal language in a very powerful, powerful way.
Mm-hmm.
But could we talk about what I think of as the guidelines? And I know you probably have some opinions about this too. Guidelines for a safe creative community.
Yeah.
Because one thing I've also observed is that, and I don't know, I'm hoping you're keeping an eye over there because the comments move and then I'm afraid we're going to miss something we could have answered, but we're doing our best to keep up with it. I think that the odd thing, if we think about chakras, first chakra is the tribe, and that's where we were all born. We were all born into one. We've all been raised in one, and whatever that means. We have individual tribes that are church groups or youth groups or PTA or, fill in the blank. And one of those is the guild, and one of those is a critique group. So any group that meets like that becomes in some way the tribe for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes, unfortunately, that tribe isn't necessarily beneficent, kind, encouraging tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there are power struggles within the tribe. I mean, that's the nature of tribal energy, I think. But I think it's also possible to recognize that as the elephant in the room, just one more elephant in the room that it is, and then work away from that as a way of establishing a different kind of conscious community. And in a conscious community, as far as I'm concerned, we agree in advance on what the ground rules are going to be. So if it's a critique group, and plenty of people have heard me say this, and actually there are guidelines on the website for this. In a critique group, it means that people don't just blurt. They're thoughtful. Sometimes they can even be so formal as to say, "May I speak?" which honors the person who's showing the work. And the person who is showing work has a responsibility to say what they want to know and what they don't want to know. If they've already finished the piece, they don't want advice on how they could have done it better. Right? Yeah. Screw that. They just want to say, I finished this piece. I'm very proud of it. I want you to celebrate this with me. And so I think we can set that up in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that any critique group that's already in session can always sit down and say, let's go over what our ground rules are and come to agreement about those in a more intentional way than we have in the past. And I think that in CST, we've tried to do that. And we've had to, because otherwise we'd be dodging bullets right and left, because there is an element of social media usually involved in CST. And there has to be a set of parameters about what will be acceptable and what just will not be acceptable. And when your major parameter is that this is a group about creativity, it's so then we know what it isn't. It's not a therapy group. It's not a political group. It's not a choir. It's a group where we talk about things that enhance our creativity and inspire us, and try and share those in ways that will help other people. And when we do that, no matter what kind of group you've got going, I think it's so important to agree that maybe only two things, that if people are really going to learn, and this doesn't happen automatically, to trust each other, we also have to agree that whatever happens within the conversation of the group stays inside that community and doesn't go anywhere else, so that we can feel freer. And I've watched it work in the topical groups in CST. The topical groups, for those of you who aren't part of CST, are particular subject groups. So there's a botanical dyeing group, and there are a printed group, and there's an MX dyeing group, and there's a group specifically about archetypes, and there's a group that's renamed itself 5 times, and they're just the ones who are the most daring and try all kinds of stuff. But within these smaller groups, which are usually around 12 to 15 people, it's been incredible to hear them witness to the way they could connect to people they've never actually met in real time frequently, because they established ground rules. And the reason I'm telling you this is so that if you've been thinking about how to get more community into your own life, you can think about what your ground rules would need to be in order to feel safe enough to talk about things with people. Because especially when we're sharing our creative ideas, these are, or work we're doing, these are our babies. And we're not going to welcome criticism there easily. And so we have to choose our words and think very carefully and once again intentionally about what we say and how we behave within that group, so that it's helpful and not, it doesn't shut people down. Because I know plenty of stories of people who were in classes or workshops, and I'm thinking of one particular friend of mine who was in a workshop, and the workshop teacher told her work wasn't abstract enough, so it wasn't valuable. And she literally told me later that she found it hard to work for over a year, and no one should be allowed to shut another person down like that.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is the opposite of that. What we want to do is, whether we like somebody's work or not, we want to be supportive of it, and we want to encourage it, and we want to realize that the story is not finished. The story has not been completely told. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Which leads me to the exercise that we did one time.
Years ago, yeah.
A couple of years ago. Maybe you can, because Zena knows where everything is. Maybe you can post that somewhere and share it.
Yeah.
Maybe on YouTube. Wherever you think.
I don't know if everyone knows what that exercise is.
Well, I'm about to tell.
Okay.
But I'm also checking to make sure you know where it is before I promise something I can't deliver.
Yes.
So it's an exercise, we had fun doing it. And I noticed somebody did it either in the collective group on Facebook, or maybe it was in the private page. But anyhow, the idea is to write a personal ad for the kinds of creative people you would like to connect to. And neither of us could really remember exactly what we wrote 2 years ago when we did this. And we weren't really going to introduce it again because we did it before, but now I'm kind of wishing we had. But it can be anything. All you have to do is get out a piece of paper and a pen and write down. You're not looking for a dinner date. You're looking for a group of people who are what? What are they? What would you like to attract to yourself in terms of other people? Because it doesn't even have to be, I'm not even sure where you post that. We can talk about that next. But I also think that we need to be clear that a community doesn't necessarily have to be 50 people. It could be, but it could just as easily be 5 people.
Yeah.
So
I see Anne just added a comment to the chat about group dynamics, which is interesting because I've been reading a little bit about team building, and which I think flows right into community building. It's kind of the same thing, but I don't know if anyone's read the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, but we've actually read it thinking about building our own team here behind the scenes. And the first dysfunction is the absence of trust, which goes right into what you were just describing about critique groups and making sure people feel safe and in the environment to be able to share their work and be vulnerable about their artwork and asking for feedback. And I think personally that's very hard for me. I'm not making artwork as often as you are, and a lot of people in CST are, and so I'm kind of always on the lookout for communities of my own too, and being vulnerable enough to really connect to other people is a struggle for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's hard to be, no matter who you are. I'm not sure vulnerability ever gets easier, but I do think it's a choice. And I think when you're an introvert, now we're back to that, that comes up every week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not even sure that's true though. I'm not sure if anything, and boy, oh boy, I don't want to stomp on any extrovert feet, but I would love to know from someone who literally sees themselves as a, oh, they're asking you to repeat.
The 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Yeah.
And it's a short read. I found it incredibly useful in just thinking about relationships in general.
Yeah, it
from
was.
my marriage to friendships to
Mm-hmm.
work relationships.
Yeah, and I usually hate that kind of stuff. The rebel in me, but I got a lot out of it. I thought it was a good book.
Yeah.
Okay, now can I rewind?
Yeah. Vulnerability,
Oh,
introversion,
right.
stepping on.
I would love to know, thank you. I'd love to hear from some extroverts because I bet it's just, do you think when you're an extrovert, it's easier or harder to be vulnerable? Or is it a moot point? Maybe vulnerability has nothing to do with being extroverted or introverted. Because I think in a way, everything in my world has a yin and a yang, a light side and a shadow side. I feel like the archetypes all do. The chakras, the way I understand them as they relate to creative intelligence, do. And so I would guess that probably that's true in this case too, that vulnerability can feel, in some cases, you can feel victimized because you didn't choose it.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the shadow side of vulnerability. Like you don't have any choice and someone else has made you feel vulnerable. And then maybe the light side is when you actually are confident enough that you choose to feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
Or you choose to show your vulnerability. And I think there's a really big difference, which is actually, that's related to the victim archetype in a way, isn't it? Because those are the two, the shadow and the light side of the victim. The shadow side of the victim is the side that's victimized against its, because it is, that happens to you. But the light side of the victim is the victory or being victorious. And so in a way, if you look at that, I never really thought about it, so I'm just kind of riffing. I hope it makes sense. When we're talking about being victimized, we're talking about being vulnerable against our will. And when we talk about being victorious in a situation, or in managing our feelings, or in relating to other people, where vulnerability is concerned, it's because we have intentionally chosen to be vulnerable, and it's a love offering.
Mm-hmm.
And so, god damn, everything is about choice, isn't it? Sorry, it's just we go into these and I think, oh, we got an outline, this is all going to be fine, and we always end up going somewhere I never really anticipated. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I love. I want to do it every Saturday, Zena. Because there are so many insights that come from, and in a way, that's what community is too. Two people, I don't know whether that's considered a community or a dialogue, but all we need is 5 or 6 other people to be in on this conversation,
which we
have here. Catherine wrote, vulnerability is an intention and a practice. It's easier to accept critique. Yeah, exactly, when you practice. And Roberta wrote, it's harder because people expect you to be always up. Oh, when you're an extrovert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Other people's expectations can shoot the hell out of how comfortable you were. Both directions.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I always used to start my workshops when we had sometimes 22 people. And I was just beginning, first day lecture, an introduction. And a lot of the time, I would remember to ask how many people were firstborns and how many people were, in the middle range, and how many people were only children, and how many people were the baby. And there is a study on birth order that's very interesting. And I only loosely had that in the back of my mind. What I was really looking for was who the sink hogs were going to be, because it was almost always the firstborns. And I know I can say that without insulting you because I am one. Okay. But in any event, eventually it became this way of literally understanding how people were going to feel in relationship with each other in the community that the workshop needed to be in order to succeed. And so I think now, if I'm ever on the road again, if I can ever get over my fear of planes and COVID, that's the next question I'm going to ask. How many people would say they're extroverts and how many people would say they're introverts? Yeah. And then they'll start screaming and running from the room because now I've said, what's your birth order? And are you an introvert or extrovert? And they're going to think, oh my God, what did I sign up for here? Okay, we got some comments. And Jeanette, good point. Are there individual degrees of vulnerability which are situational? I definitely think that's true. Yeah. Let's see. Can you read? I can't read from here. Confident leaders can be extremely vulnerable when dedication and intent are misinterpreted or attacked. Yeah, boy, it's minefield, isn't it?
Possibly both at different times. I was just thinking that. I usually think of myself as an introvert. But I definitely need community. I crave connection. I think we all do in some way, but yeah. Ellen says Zoom classes are great for introverts.
Yeah. Well, they are, but they also aren't. Well, they are, and they're not, because even on Zoom, there's a minefield when it comes to community. Because I'm thinking of a story I was told this week in an email, and please never think she's too busy. Who am I to write to her? Just please write to me. It's so interesting because my stories, I don't know whether I'll ever run out, but I love other people's stories. And I had a story from someone who was part of an online Zoom quilt guild. And an issue came up that was basically about race. And she was explaining as a mixed race person how she felt. And someone else on the call made one of those stupid, flippant comments that people make that was basically racist and along the lines of, well, some of my friends are Black too, and that's not helpful. And that sort of thing destroys community that we're just trying to build. And so we can't paint a picture here of creating a community where there is never any dissension, there's never any ignorance. But within a loving community, hopefully, we can set healthy boundaries and we can gently correct these things that we see in each other. I mean, I said one time, I called up my youngest sister. Thank God this is a long time ago, and maybe I'm smarter, but probably not. And Jeff, her husband, answered the phone. This is the father of their children. And I said, oh, hi, isn't Mary around? He goes, no, she'd blah wherever she was, yoga. Oh, so you babysitting? He goes, Jane, they're my kids. Whoa, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, my own blind spot. And we all have them. And now we're even more aware of them because of everything that's transpired in the past year. And these are things we may not like to pay attention to, that are challenging and painful. But in a healthy community, we can be compassionate and kind, and we can go into it with the best of intentions, and we can reset our own course when we need to do so, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. We're always growing and learning.
Yeah. We're not over yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're not over yet. Other comments over there?
Michelle says, I like to be with people, but then after a while I'm overloaded and need to be alone. That's me too, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Sally, extroverts can become introverts when attacked by other people's expectations. We've got to remember we are all good enough, and we only have to please ourselves, that's for sure.
think knowing ourselves and being able to read what we need in the moment is the most important thing,
Yeah,
really.
well, I do too. And I think the sooner, and this is a really big one, it's very hard, but I think the sooner we can drop defensiveness. I
Yeah.
mean, her comment reminded me of that, that we're all okay. We're basically all okay. Well, like Suzuki said, you're all perfect and you need a little improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the ongoing issue. We're all perfect and we're all totally flawed. And we're perfect beings having an earth experience that is challenging and screwed up and cold and sometimes no shower and people say mean things and we just the cleaner here's the have we ever talked about have you and I ever talked about burn clean?
I don't know. Let's do it now.
She knows. um I'm not giving you enough time
What do you mean?
to talk.
Go
Like I'm kind
for
of
it.
blah 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 blah. Well, I think burn clean is so important because this is what I thought of. Some of this came from actually talking to your cousin Elena one time in Seattle. And burn clean means, in my mind, that the experiences that we have, that typically there's fallout. There we walk away from a particular exchange with someone and we feel resentful or we feel shame or we feel, I'm talking about the negative stuff now. And it would be so but I think it's probably true of the joy too. If I have an interchange with you that's really positive and happy, I want you to know later how much that meant to me
Yeah.
and how uplifting it was. I don't want to assume you know that.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, if we have an exchange, and we have, where my feelings got hurt or your feelings got hurt, I want to acknowledge that too and resolve it. Because I think the sooner we resolve these things, that's what burn clean means. We're not carrying around a big, damn, ugly bag full of old resentments and shit that we should deal with. We're trying to get it all to burn clean and just ash, gone.
And sometimes that can come from talking to the person that you have had an issue with, but there are so many examples where you may not have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it's almost harder
Mm-hmm.
to process it yourself and figure out what it's going to take to burn clean internally.
Well, that's right. Do you have an initial guess, idea about that? What it would take?
I do. I'm not sure if I want to go there right now.
All right. Well, you don't have to go there if you don't want to. We're burning clean.
Yeah.
But I do think you're right that it's not as easy as just like, okay, you did this to me and now you're going to say you're sorry, right? Because you're not.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't always how the exchange is going to go. So then we have to figure out other ways to reconcile it so we're no longer carrying it around. And sometimes that's forgiveness of what we perceive. Remember, what we perceive is the active term here. What we perceive as lack of understanding on their part.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't make anybody think anything or change their mind, but we can reconcile that we did the best that we could under the circumstances. And maybe sometimes burn, as far as burn clean goes, that's the best you can really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a point where we need to get over some of this sensitivity? Sometimes what is said is not what is meant in the way it is taken. The babysitting remark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think we can oversensitize like crazy, and I would the way I handle that, which is maybe it's related to how I burn clean, is although we did talk about a punching bag earlier today.
That's true.
And I don't know whether you can get one on Amazon, but sometimes I'm ready. I'm ready to order the punching bag. But I think that, and I'm vulnerable admitting that to you. I'm not always like Miss Happy Camper Jane. Sometimes I'm really not at all. But what I try to do, what I personally try to do is I try to literally put myself in the other person's shoes and realize that knowing as much as I know about them, or maybe I don't know anything about them, is I just try to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I'm not going to carry around somebody else's crap if I don't understand it, or if I don't like it. I'm not, it reaches a point of diminishing returns when it comes to trying to change someone in a community. Although, of course, it can be, and this has been true in our own community, it's been true for me in workshop communities, where there might be somebody who was so insensitive to the other people around her. I only really deal with women, that's why I'm using her as the pronoun, that as the responsible leader who valued the community, I was the only one who could say, really in this case, I just don't think this is working out for you, and you can't be in my mastery program anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever, which is heartbreaking, but it's got to happen to protect the community.
Yeah, within the community, we all have a personal responsibility of, I guess, a burning clean, but also figuring out what our level, going back to this, the comment about sensitivity, and reconciling within ourselves, I guess, deciding when we might be holding on to something for too long, mm-hmm. and if we are, then speaking up about it and trying to correct it. I think it makes me think of another book, actually.
Good.
The Four Agreements, which part of it can be a little woo-woo for me, but they're almost a mantra for me, just the Four Agreements themselves. I haven't actually read the book in years and years, but one of them is don't take things personally. And when I have an interaction where I walk away feeling like I said something dumb or I was offended, I always try and come back to that. Mm-hmm. And because maybe the person didn't mean, usually, almost 99% of the time, maybe they said something flippantly and it wasn't meant to hurt me, or for me to take and hold now and walk around with it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it actually makes sense, and it reminds me of something that Caroline Myss wrote in one of her early, I don't remember where this would be, but I know it had a big impact on me, because she said, when you feel that way, you are assuming that you are, think about it, the center of somebody else's world.
Right.
Which is really you wanting to be the center of everybody's world.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say things and you're not the center of their world, and they didn't say it for any, it was random. It was random. And that helped me, I think it's really good news to say to people, you're not that important. That can easily be misunderstood and misinterpreted, but it can also be a huge gift to realize you really aren't that important, and that means you're free to be whoever you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that too.
I know.
We can be so egotistical.
Yeah. It's all about me, and they were out to get me, and me. It's not about me.
Yeah.
Hardly anything's about me. It's about them. Van Morrison wrote a song, and there's a line in it. Now I'm really showing my age. God, I love that song. All the girls were dressed up for each other instead of which I guess I'm the one who put the spin on that, but it's like we dress up to impress each other, but it's still about me.
Mm-hmm. And
they were dressing up to impress the other girls, but they thought they were dressing up to impress the boys.
Yeah.
And so that's a 1 hour. My God, I'm not even going there. I think I passed the threshold of that discussion when I hit 60. So, but the point is still how much we believe, if we're not careful, the world is revolving around us when it really isn't at all. And that recognizing that makes it a lot easier to let things that other people say go, even if they were mean. It's their problem.
And it's the reverse too. If you make a comment like your babysitting comment, or just say something flippant yourself, and you can apologize or feel like an idiot for doing whatever you did, but just letting it go
Mm-hmm.
and not making one of the four agreements: don't make assumptions, because maybe that person didn't offend them you think the way you think it did.
Mm-hmm.
It goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that it all comes back to burning
Mm-hmm.
clean and not
Mm-hmm.
leaving the situation holding on to the guilt or
Mm-hmm.
frustration or
Mm-hmm. I think the
embarrassment.
old-fashioned way to handle that is say, "Don't borrow trouble."
Yeah. You've been saying that my whole life.
I have been.
Yeah.
Well, good.
It's a good thing.
That's so funny. I'm looking at comments too.
Judy knows that song.
Oh, I love what Martina said. Learning how to let the other person own their own negativity.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I'm going to go back.
Yeah.
Can I go back to George Bush?
Okay.
I think so much time has passed that I really like George Bush now. But when George Bush was president, I wasn't super crazy about him. But I was also reading Caroline Myss a lot. And the takeaway that was really positive was that from the standpoint of sacred contracts, if and not everyone agrees with this, but if in general, I'll just tell you what I believe. I believe we have souls, and I believe our souls are intact and separate from our bodies. And I believe that our souls are connected to the divine, and that connection can never be broken. And I think that when a soul is on the planet doing really difficult jobs and handling situations that make other people dislike them a lot, there's a reason to respect that, even if you don't agree with it, because it might be what we need as human beings as we are evolving in order for the overall good to improve over time. Now, you have to really stand back and see the big picture instead of the individual trees, because individual trees can be taken out, and that's horrifying and sad, and we're connected to the individual trees. But individual pine trees of a certain kind have to burn to the ground in a forest fire before their seeds can be released by the intense heat in order to make new trees. And so now we're back to trust. It always is full circle by 3:00. Sometimes we can't be so vain that we assume we know the plan. Nature is a grand plan so much larger than we are. On some level, we have to support and trust that unfolding. And I think the same thing's true when we encounter people that we don't really like or who are different from us, or we have leadership that we don't like, is that we're entitled to dislike the leadership, whatever it is, whoever happens to be in charge at that point in time. But the bigger picture is that this is a progression that is continuing and continuing and continuing. And once again, we are very small parts of that whole thing. And it's a choice. I choose to believe that the larger community will prevail, and that there are small tragedies that are terrible, terrible tragedies, but that the larger community will prevail. And now we're like way beyond CST, but that's just, I don't know.
It's all related.
It's all related. Yeah. So, okay, Debbie's leaving. See you Wednesday for the Power of Paint. We just have a couple of minutes left. What did Christy write? Community is a place to nurture and encourage one another's creativity through kindness and understanding. There you go. Can be individuals in the group burning clean or through group activities. That's right. That's absolutely right.
Mary says, where do you learn more about burning clean?
I think I'm the only one who uses that, and I don't have anything written on it. So maybe I will. I remember talking about it at Shake Rag when I taught there. I don't remember. Carol Pollard and Nancy Tully were in that class, and a few other wonderful people. they might remember exactly what year that was, but in any event, maybe 2017, that's where I first got that idea, and we talked about it in that class. So I might be encouraged to write a piece about that, though, because I think it's an important, helpful concept. But we've only got a few minutes left, and we did want to say that we do have registration for the Creative Strength Training Program open, and because we haven't been able to work all week, we're kind of a week behind with some of the things that we were getting ready for in order to close the enrollment on March 1st. So we're probably going to extend it another week to make up so we can get more word out there. But if you've been watching our videos and you've really enjoyed what we have to talk about and it's been resonating with you, we would really love to encourage you. And many of you are already part of our community, but if you're thinking this might sound like a good fit for you and you'd like to develop your work in a safe environment and join a topical group and get to know some other people around the world in a more personal way, then this is for you. And I don't know, I don't do things I don't want to do. And I twist her arm a little bit, but she's always in. So I'm so lucky. And we are going to offer a $40 discount on the immersion level program if you would sign up for the whole year. And we're also going to offer half off if you want to go on the monthly plan for the first month so you can see what it's like. And we just really talked about that and hatched it right before we went live here today, because we haven't seen each other much this week and we've had little kids around when we were together. So that'll be, where will that be?
I'll post that on Facebook in the Creative Strength Collective group and on your website.
My website.
Your website.
Yeah, okay, good.
I don't have a website.
No.
On the Cornerstones of Creativity page.
Okay.
This afternoon, after we finish here.
So we want to make it something that anybody who wants to be there can be part of. I still have a little scholarship money left, thanks to some generous donors and current members. And let's see what else is coming up. We've got the Power of Paint on Wednesday, and that's going to be, I just finished it, 75 slides. It's a blockbuster movie. This is like the Ben-Hur of textile paint. So we've still got that coming up. And then next Saturday, we're going to talk about the last cornerstone, and that's confidence.
Yeah.
And that'll be really fun too. So thanks for coming over today.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, it was fun.
I needed this community today.
Yeah, I think we both did.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, we talk about canceling and then there's nowhere we can. Oh, and Bev's writing, where do you go to sign up? If you want to read more about creative strength training, you go to my website, janedonewald.com, and up under study, right?
Yeah.
It'll say creative strength training, and then you can drop down on that menu.
I'll post it in the chat here.
Oh, okay, great. And you can see 3 interviews with current members, and that just goes to prove the point of that sometimes people are really hesitant, but once they get into it, Janie Crook just joined us last year, and she just joined again, and she said, I wasn't going to, but I had so much fun last year, I just missed it already. And so that's what I love to hear, and we had a good year. This one's going to be even better. Exhibitions, you can see the catalogs that we did last year because of the pandemic, and we're going to do a group exhibition and an archetype exhibition. So there are a lot of reasons to connect with us, but the main reason is because it's fun. Yeah. And maybe we'll bring back a couple of recipe videos, because
those were fun.
Those were a soft spot in my heart.
Yeah.
Send me if there's something you'd like to see us cook. It's a challenge. Send me an email and we'll look it up and we'll cook it for you. And we'll record it. That would be fun.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Well, we need something to do. Once the Cornerstones are over, we've kind of killed that topic. Then we need to go on. Maybe in April it'll be 4 cooking shows. I don't know, to keep people guessing.
I like that.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds great. Right. Well, we love you all. Thanks again for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed it, and more importantly, hope you are part of a community that you love and you trust. Take care. Be safe.